Hi, let's now close Module 1, Fundamentals of Electricity Market, with its fourth block that looks at current challenges with renewables in electricity markets. When thinking of these challenges, the first one to consider is how renewable energy generation affects system operation itself. Maybe the most discussed and famous example is that of California and what the system operator there has coined the duck curve. The duck curve is represented here on this graph, which comes from the California ISO, and this graph is for the total load of the California power system as a function of the time of the day. And then these various curves are total load evolution for different years. The reference here is 2012. Then there's 2013, 2014, etc., till 2020. Do you know why these curves are going down this way during the day? It's because of solar power generation. As you have more and more solar power generation in your system, rooftop solar, the different consumers, what they need from the system in terms of electricity is going to lower and lower during the day. This is since the typical profile for solar power generation is going to be like that. At night, no production. During the morning, production is going to increase. At midday, you reach the top, and then it's going to decrease again until the next night. A consequence here is that the more and more you have renewable power generation on rooftops, the more the peak during the day is going to reduce the net demand for the power system. It might reach a critical level here where they have what you call overgeneration risk. This is since there are some units that need to stay on, and they are the baseline units. If you go under a certain level, then you're going to have a problem with your baseline units. Another problem in the afternoon is that as solar power is decreasing and the electric load is increasing because people are getting home and need electricity, you are going to have a ramping need of 13 gigawatt. That's a projected value from the California ISO in 3 hours that you need to ramp up. How are we going to do that? This is why California is looking for lots of ranking capability and flexibility in its power system. And you may have heard in the news or in the press that California is investing massively in storage. This is partly to cover these ramping needs in the end of the afternoon. More than this average impact that we've shown through the duck curve, we have to realize that this impact is going to vary from one day to the next and from 1 hour to the next. Why from one day to the next? If you consider a typical solar power production profile for a single day, it might actually be very different the following day. Let me support my point with this data I collected from Australia at the University of Queensland, St. Lucia campus, the Prentice building. You can actually access this data freely through their website and make the same kind of plots. I took 3 days in a row in September 2018, and these days are extremely representative of the point I'm trying to make here. On the first day, the solar power generation curve is very smooth. I don't think it was a cloudy day, and this is what you see typically when you have a very nice sunny day. On the following day, you follow this curve in the early morning, but then you see all this swing in power generation. You can guess these were clouds passing at that time. After that, you have another episode with a lot of clouds passing in the afternoon. Note that when the clouds are passing, the solar power generation is dropping a lot, but then it's going to swing back to levels that might be actually higher than if you have a sunny day. This is because of the reflection of the light on the cloud that might actually bring even more solar power generation from the solar panels. On the third day, this must have been a very cloudy day with lots of passages of clouds, since the variability is quite significant throughout the whole day. On top of this direct impact on the fact that it's highly variable in terms of generation, another point is that renewable energy generation is difficult to predict. Let me show you, based on an example, for northern Jutland, so western Denmark, with 2 example forecasts from 2003, the 23rd of December, and 2001, the 16th of November. The forecasts there are represented as solid lines out to 48 hours ahead, with an hourly resolution. The little circles and associated line here are the observations that were collected a posteriori. On the left side, on the 23rd of December, you have the example of a very good forecast. You can see that the trend is right, the amplitude is right, unless maybe you consider that this end of the forecast is not so good. But I can tell you this is a damn good forecast. On the other side, the forecast for the 16th of November is not so good. The trend is not right, the amplitude is not right, and you can see that between the forecast and the actual measurements, sometimes it's just simple to double. We said renewables have an impact on the system operation. We said renewables are highly variable and non-dispatchable. We said renewables are difficult to predict. Now we're integrating renewables in electricity markets. And what can happen, and this had been evidenced over and over the last 10 years, is that renewables have an impact on the market outcomes and electricity prices. This is a very nice figure that has been produced by a student of ours at DTU, which I would like to use as a supporting example. This figure shows the average electricity price as a function of the time of the day here and as a function of the forecasted wind power penetration in the markets. We define forecasted wind power penetration as the ratio between forecasted wind power and the forecasted electric load to meet. When there is no predicted wind power in the system, you can see the curve for the electricity price. The price is low in the morning, which is linked to the fact the electricity load is low, and then it's going to increase during the day with two peaks at midday and the end of the afternoon that are supported by electricity needs. But as we predict more and more wind power penetration in the system, we see that this curve lowers and lower and smoothens because of the impact of wind power on the electricity market. In this example, so this is for the Nord Pool in 2007, between no predicted wind power penetration and fairly consistent wind power penetration, more than 50%, the price was simply divided by 2 on average. So, based on all these impacts of renewable energy on electricity market and system operation, what is the solution we are looking for? One thing that we see out there is the quest for flexibility. Flexibility is to be seen as the ability to adapt to variable and possibly unforeseen changes in operating conditions. In practice, this flexibility may originate from generation units, so you may think of gas-fired power plants, power system itself, you may think of HVDC, the thermal rating of the line, and storage. The demand side, here we think of demand response, and there are various experiments out there, like this one for which I've shown a picture, which is EcoGrid, a set of projects on the Bornholm Island in Denmark, where demand response is integrated in electricity market to support wind power integration. And finally, one may have an integrated energy system view where you try to link electricity market with markets for other energy carriers like gas and heat, and then you try to bring the flexibility from this other system to the electric power system. In practice, we have challenges, but there are also opportunities. If we think of it, renewable energy systems have evolved a lot technically, and today it might be possible to support power system operation with renewable energy generation units. An example is the provision of ancillary services. If you think of imbalances, so mismatch between supply and demand, before having a lot of renewables in the system, this mismatch might be quite small. So the demand for imbalance management might be quite small. In the future, when we have more renewable power generation in the system, these imbalances, so these mismatches between schedule and what's really happening, they might increase. So this is some of the challenge that we may name with the integration of renewables. In the past and until now, it's mostly traditional generators that permit to handle these imbalances. But are they phasing out? we have more and more renewable energy generation out there, how are we going to be able to handle those? Actually, in practice, it is possible that the demand and the wind generation asset themselves can handle the provision of ancillary services for handling these imbalances. And who should pay? Traditionally, demand was paying for the management of imbalances, but in the future, maybe everybody will pay for the management of imbalances. Another aspect to consider, since we mentioned that it was difficult to predict, maybe we should accept the uncertainty from the wind, from the sun, and also in the load, and we could rethink the electricity market with probabilistic offers. This sounds crazy, but actually it's possible to rethink electricity market where instead of trading with deterministic quantities, we trade with probabilistic quantities. Somehow you declare, I'm not really sure, but I think I could produce this, and we can still match people together even though they are not really sure of what they're going to produce or what they're going to consume. Eventually, there are some open questions to consider which I would like you to keep in your mind for the rest of the course. First of all, can we continuously integrate more and more renewable energy generation through existing electricity markets? What would electricity markets look like for a power system with 100% renewable energy generation? And finally, what will be the potential impact of those game changers that are on the way, like storage and peer-to-peer electricity markets? Thank you for your attention. I would like to invite you now to use the self-assessment quiz to check your understanding.